Hi, I'm David Kais, and I run R for the rest of us. You may think of R as a tool for complex statistical analysis, but it's much more than that. From data visualization to efficient reporting to improving your workflow, R can do it all. On this podcast, I talk with people about how they use R in unique and creative ways. Well, I'm delighted to be joined today by Meghan Harris. Meghan is a data scientist at the Prostate Cancer Trials Consortium at the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, where she uses R for all of her daily data programming automation tasks to support prostate cancer research. On the side, Meghan likes to do generative art with R. It's a lot of R's.
Wow.
And so I'm excited to talk with you today, Meghan, about the generative art piece of your work. So welcome.
Thank you so much, David, for having
So before we get into that, maybe we can kind of start out, and you've actually been on the podcast before, so we'll put a link to the episode that you were in before. But can you just give us kind of a brief overview of how you originally got into R?
Yes. So I got into R technically with the first job I actually had outside of grad school. I went to grad school, got my degree in public health and epidemiology. And unfortunately for us grad schoolers, we had to learn SAS, which is not R. No offense to any SAS lovers. But when I was in my first job outside of grad school, there was opportunities to use R. So at that time, I was evaluating studies and stuff like that. And it got to a point where I really could not put down the idea of learning R. So I just kind of gritted through it and kind of taught myself. And then I swear it was like one day, it was like a light bulb went off and I was like, oh, I get it now. And I just started to slowly incorporate using R in like my day-to-day work until I eventually, left that job, got different jobs with the actual word data in the title. And now all of a sudden I'm a data scientist here.
Yeah. And because you've had a few jobs, I mean, the evaluation job, if I'm remembering correctly, was that was at the University of Buffalo? Is that, or was
No,
that
so
somewhere
that
else?
was actually
Oh,
at
via.
that was at
No. Go ahead.
no, nah. That's the competitor. No. So I was at CCNY because I know
That's
Via
right.
too. They're both here in Buffalo. Yeah. No, that was at CCNY. And then while I was at CCNY, what was funny, because I always say this story too. I don't know if you remember, David, but you were actually one of the people that inspired me to kind of like get further into it because of I saw you do a presentation or a talk on our markdown at the 2019, I think the AEA, American Evaluation Association
Hmm.
conference. I think that was in Minneapolis, right? Before
Yep.
before the world closed down.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I saw you presenting on our markdown, I was just like, oh my God, like it was like the confirmation that like I knew more than I thought I knew. Because it was just like, I know what he's doing there. Like, I know that. So when I got back from that conference, like, I just had like all of this motivation to just like learn and whatever. And yeah, I did get the position at the University of Buffalo. I was working as a data specialist, working with like a lot of mapping stuff, GIS, and like opioid overdose data,
That's
stuff like
right.
that. Yeah. And now I'm here at Memorial Sloan Kettering prostate cancer data stuff as well.
Great.
So nice. Not
Yeah.
not a not a smooth path, but
I mean, that's kind of the interesting thing about a lot of our users is people, have different backgrounds, come from different places, do really different things with R. And so I think in that sense, while it might not feel smooth, I think it's not atypical in many ways.
sure,
Uh,
absolutely.
yes, I'd love to hear more about the work that you do with R. I know obviously you can't talk about the specifics, but just in general, can you give us a sense
Yeah.
of what your daily use of R looks like?
Mhm. So I think so far, because I believe I'll be coming up on 2 years actually at some Kettering in the next month or so. Um, and I am primarily working on a study that is just called Dora, like the little cartoon character, show up page there. But basically, we as data scientists that work at the Prostate Cancer Trials Consortium, a lot of our work is just supporting the clinical trial data. So that looks different depending on what type of study you're on. So DORA is a late phase trial, like I think like the last step um, for like safety and efficacy before it goes to the FDA and like, all that good stuff. So a lot of that is actually what I feel like some people would call pretty boring work of like getting tables together, like compiling reports. I think some of the funner stuff I've been able to do or work on has been like literally rebuilding our like workflow pipelines. Like we had like a major overhaul and like how we process our data, like just the steps of which, it goes through us before it gets to a deliverable, whatever the deliverable is. And a lot of that work is super tedious. So there is a lot of just like data validation and just making sure things are in the right space. Like it's a lot. But then I also do package development as well. Very lightly, we have our own internal packages that we use. Actually, it's hilarious given like that I'm a generative artist. Like I really don't do a lot of data visualization in my job. I am definitely the go-to person when like there's something that needs to be created, but like in my day-to-day, I don't really get to work with visualizations a lot, which is like surprising to me given like how I started and like where I thought I
Yeah.
would land. But it's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, that's pretty much I think. I
Okay.
just
Yeah. And so with the, I mean, yeah, I saw a lot of your work, several years ago, thinking about like the Tidy Tuesday data visualization
mm,
pieces that you put together.
mhm.
And then I saw you kind of start to get interested in generative art. So can you talk about the process of how you got into that in the first place?
Yes. So, I got into that because of I'm not calling it X, okay? It's Twitter. I got into it on Twitter back when Twitter was great and everybody in our community was on it. I had came across I don't know if you're familiar with Ijamaka Fumagali. She just got married. She was the first person that like I credit to like turning me on to generative art because I had no idea what it was. I had no idea what it was, and I know that I had connected with her on Twitter, and she would always post all these different like art pieces, and I never understood how. And it's like, okay, I know people are using R to do this. I know they're using ggplot probably, but I don't understand how this works. And it wasn't until one day she had posted only one blog. If you go to her website, it is still only her single blog that is published, where she explained how to do subdivision of rectangles, pretty much how to make a whole bunch of rectangles from one rectangle. And when I read that blog post, I was just like, my main takeaway was that I'm not smart enough for this. That was my main takeaway. Um, but what what I did love about the blog post was that she showed the code because I was not understanding how like I just it wasn't I'm like, how does this work? So one of the more like pivotal turning points about this whole experience was that I had saw in the blog post she had literally just an example of a data frame and like the fact that she needed data to create something on a digicard. And that was like literally all I needed to see. I just needed to see like, oh, it's data. And then I started slowly like doing my own stuff, doing my own stuff. And then I was just like, oh my God, again, a light switch just went off. And I was just like, this is how you do it. Okay. So that's literally like what happened. Like I just connected with the right person on Twitter and they were so gracious enough to take time to share a blog post. And like that blog post was like the seed. And that was it. The rest is history, honestly.
That's great. And if someone has never, seen or heard of generative art, how do you describe it? What makes art generative?
Yeah. So I think people will disagree with my definition. But my definition is that if some component of a computer, some aspect of a computer is being used to create the final output of the art, to me, that's generative art. So to me, that could be coding in R or Python or whatever, JavaScript, whatever language. That could be using like a click and drag interface like Canva because I'm using a computer to do it. And that could also obviously be giving an AI system a prompt to shoot something out. I don't know much about AI art. I haven't dabbled in it, only a tiny bit when I was presenting on my talk last year about art. But I really don't get into the specifics of that. I mean, I think it's cool and awesome, but I also feel like there's like these ethical considerations as well for the AI art. But that's generative art too, because you are using a computer or some medium to like produce a result for you. That's my opinion on what generative art is.
And we'll get, I mean, in a little bit, we'll have you kind of demonstrate some examples, but it seems like, you know, what you were saying before is you talked about Ijimaka's example and how, you know, it was using data to generate the art. And it seems like in many ways, that's kind of one of the pieces also that distinguishes the type of generative art that you do is you're working from data. I mean, it makes sense, right? You're working in R. So that seems like a unique feature as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I made that distinction as well when I presented on this last year. Because I think people hear generative art, and obviously because of the AI art boom, it's I think people just imagine people sitting down and like typing these long drawn out sentences to create art. And it's just like, no, like you're literally like in here like munging, man. Like you are wrangling data. You are like, you know, and I think what people don't understand is like how you get to that point of like, okay, well, how did you think of this thing? It's a really like, as you'll see in like the demo, like it's a really abstract way of thinking. And I feel like that I mean, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I feel like that once you see someone do it, it's kind of like, oh, like I think that people feel like they're boxed in, like there's these rules that you have to follow because a lot of people don't open ggplot unless like they have like real life data that they need to plot, and there's rules about how you plot that data, and like that doesn't exist with, you know, generative art, which is why I love it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious, I mean, I wanted to ask about, you know, why it appeals to you. One thing you talked about a few minutes ago was in your current job, you rarely actually do data viz. I'm guessing that part of the appeal for you is the fact that you can, you know, get your data viz juices flowing. Is that right? And are there other things about it that makes it appealing to you?
Yeah. So I mean, honestly, like I'm getting to the point in my career where it's just like I want to spend as less time as possible in front of a computer, honestly. So I don't really have the data viz itch I usually used to get anymore. I don't know, maybe that's a product of being a parent now and just being tired all the time. I know. But what it was that I loved that I could use R without anything being wrong per se. So like when you are doing practical work for work, like, you know, there's probably a right and a wrong way to do something. Like I'm not going to sit there and use, God, I don't know, some weird geom for like a time series when it really should just be geom line. Like I don't have a lot of creativity there of like how I create a time series or like how I do an analysis or whatever. And one of the more freeing things about being a generative artist is that there is no rules. It's only wrong if you don't get the image that you want. You know, there are no rules about how you create the data. There are no rules about how you style it aesthetically. Like there are no rules. And I think that's what I love the most about it. I mean, that's kind of why I'm jumping the gun. I know that's kind of why, like, I feel the way that I do about statistics. Because I feel like there is way too much subjectiveness in statistics. So although like I had taken all these stats classes and like I'm a trained epidemiologist, like that is like what my degree is in. I don't like the fact that I can spend so much time making a stats model, and then so it's just like that's wrong. Like if I spend all my time making my art, you can't tell me it's wrong.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So it was, so it's just really freeing to like, that was like the main thing for me. I mean, I feel like it's fun and it's therapeutic. It used to be like, when and I would just get upset with life. Like I literally would open my computer and like go to R and just start making art like 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever.
Wow.
I don't have time to do that now though, but
Well,
but it
you
was
did,
therapeutic.
yeah. And you did tell me, speaking of not much time and still using R, you did tell me that you used or you did generative art while on maternity leave. How is that possible, and what did that look like? Were you doing it while your son was napping?
So, when I first had my son, I had my son in November 2022. And first off, it was only possible because of my wonderful husband. Okay, let's just get that straight. It's because I had a support system, right? But what me and my husband used to do when my son was younger, when he was an infant, we would actually do shifts. So I'd be up for 12 hours with my son while he's sleeping or whatever. Then my husband would take over for the 12 hours. So I was able to do a lot because, that's what they're if they sleep like on 2 hours,
Right, right.
So I was able to do that. There'd be times where, with postpartum and stuff, because I'm very open and active about, whatever. I already have mental health history and all that stuff. So like when I was postpartum, I'm like, this is gonna be fun. So there would be times where me and my husband would work out times because I'm just like, okay, like I just really need this hour or two to like crank out this art. Like
Hmm.
I think also I think the January challenge that used to be super popular on Twitter. I don't know if it's still super popular now. I attempted to do it this year, but I was hospitalized this year in January, so I couldn't do it.
Mm.
But every January, there's also like a daily like generative art challenge, not just for our users, for anybody coding. So I remember doing stuff like that as well. And then I had to do some generative art because me and 3 other co-authors, we are actually in the middle of creating a textbook right now for creating generative art for the R programming language. So that was going on as well. So I had like a little tiny bit of like, oh, I have like an obligation to make some art, but then also like I really just need to make some art before I lose my mind in this house. So that's how it was possible.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's the fact that it was kind of therapeutic for you in a way.
It was
Um,
fun.
Interesting. Okay, I have one last question before we dive in and have you show me some art. So, when I reached out to you about doing this interview, you told your quote was, "I absolutely hate math." I want to know
Yeah.
how you can hate math and make generative art, or in other words, like how much math do you need to know in order to successfully make generative art?
So the answer is it depends on what you want to make. So for me, I unfortunately had to learn some type of math because I actually have an affinity for circles. I really love circles. As you can see, there's a huge circle that I created in R and got printed. Yeah. So I had to learn how to um translate like geometric equations into parametric equations that can be put into ggplot, and it sounds super complicated, but it's super not. Actually, the example of what we're going to do today actually shows it, so I won't go too much into it right now.
Okay.
But that was basically what I needed to know. So there are some things that like I do want to kind of like learn and get a little deeper in, but that does not impede on my ability to make my art. I think one of the hardest things I had to learn math wise was actually more basic geometry. Like kind of like a refresher geometry, because there was a point where like I really wanted to learn how to pack circles. So like have a whole bunch of circles and none
Yeah.
of them overlapping. And all that is literally just like distance formulas, like really basic geometry. But it took me a really long time to figure out because I'm not that smart when it comes to math. So I guess to answer the question, for me personally, I just needed a lower level basic understanding of geometry, and then like the hardest part was learning how to translate that into code. But for some people, like it might be that you don't need that. You just need to like understand that relationship between the data you're creating and the visuals you want. For some people that do like super like ridiculous stuff, like I think the people who do super ridiculous stuff, like Danielle Navarro, like she's got degrees in math, and like that makes sense. But you really don't need to know like so much math to do art, because I don't like math, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it seems like you kind of figure out like, well, what is the thing that I want to do?
Mhm.
And then what is the math that I need to know in order to be able to do that thing?
Yep.
As opposed to thinking, okay, first I have to master,
Mm-mm.
every piece of
Mm-mm.
geometry knowledge that I forgot from high school
Nope. Absolutely
and
not.
use that. Yeah. Cool. Well, you're going to show us an example here of some generative art. So do you want to put your screen up and
Yeah.
give us a little intro about what this is?
Sure. So I'll share this one. Yeah. So I thought it'd be fun to do one of the examples of a blog post that I made a very very long time ago, and I just realized I probably should have the finished picture up and then show how. So sorry, let me go.
It's okay. I mean, feel free if you want to just run the whole code and then we can go back through it piece by piece. That works as well.
Because I was like literally here. I was like, I have it.
Oh, okay. That
Okay.
works too.
Yeah. So I created this blog post that was supposed to act as like an intro to data art, because one of the things that I saw, God, I don't know, what, 3 years ago now at this point, was that when I wanted to learn how to make art in art, there was a lack of like basic beginner like examples.
Yeah.
Everyone's just like, oh yeah, we can do it, like do all this crazy modeling, and this is here, blah blah blah. And like, I don't understand this. I need something simpler. So I attempted to do that with creating this blog post. And this was one of the examples of something that was completely an accident that I created. And I thought, oh my God, this is the best accident I ever made. So I figured you can revisit the code and just show how this kind of came to be.
Cool.
You can do that. Um, yeah, so you want me to just go through each, like, how do you want to
Yeah,
do
just
this?
walk through it line by line. Again, I'll ask you questions as we
Gotcha.
go, and you will see my geometry is my like worst math subject in high school. So
That's
you'll
okay.
see that.
It's fine, no worries. Okay, so when I am starting, I always do tidyverse. I am a tidyverse girl. I learned tidyverse first before base. I'm so sorry, our purists. But yes, so I will use tidyverse, load everything in because I don't care about being inefficient. And now here I have this comment here: setting parameters to let ggplot to plot data in a circular fashion. So, okay, basically, what this is any kind of arbitrary number of like how many points do I literally want on the plot? How many rows of data do I want in the data frame? That's all this is. That's what my n is. So right here we're doing 500 because that is what's going to recreate our image.
And is that because
Um,
the image
mhm.
which had like a whole bunch of line, I don't know if it was lines or what, but
Yeah,
I'm guessing there were 500 of those then if you putting n equals 500, or is that not right?
yeah. So if we're gonna go by that way, I'd say there's 250 lines because each line would at least have an end and a start.
I
So
see.
we have 500 rows of data itself.
Okay.
Does that make
Yeah, definitely. Because it seems like right now, I mean, again, before you get into any of the plotting, you have to kind of to do this type of generative art, you have to get your data correct and get it in the
right?
format and what you need in order to
Yep,
begin plotting.
yep, absolutely. I think that's the thing that really trips people up as well. Because when we are working for regular work, like we're just given our data. Like there is no no aspect of creating data. Like data just comes as it is.
Yeah.
So I think that's the hardest thing I think for people to like understand. Like we are literally making just arbitrary numbers. They literally can be
Right.
anything. Like I can literally turn this to anything else and it will probably actually no, it will definitely drastically change what happens.
I
Um
mean, it's in some ways it seems similar. I mean, I know you said like you get given your data. But in a lot of ways, when people are given data, it's really messy, or it's in an untidy
Right.
format, for example. And so this feels to me analogous to the step of, before you get to ggplot, you have to get your data into the right format in order to do
Sure.
your plotting. It's just that here, you are not only getting it into the right format, but you're actually generating it in order to
Yeah.
plot it.
Yeah. And I love that you said that. That's a good distinction. Because in my talk I did last year, I pretty much said how like creating art in this manner helped me to like get myself back into work super fast, like after I was done with paternity leave. And it's because even though like I'm creating this arbitrary data, the methodology of preparing it for visualization or processing it would be the same no matter what the data is. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just, so it's definitely a useful skill that you get to practice, when
Yeah.
you're generating it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Well, let's see how this code works.
Yeah. So this next step here is I don't know if you're familiar with the term data. They like,
I was at
THETA.
some point.
Yeah, so basically that's just the angles of the circle. So normally this if we were to create like an actual circle, like we would have a sequence of numbers running from 0 to 2 times pi. Um, and that's how you would make like just a regular circle. But for this one, this is actually where the accident was when I made this to begin with. I was trying to teach myself how to create circles from scratch, and I fat fingered and wrote 40 instead of 2 here, and that created
Huh.
what we're gonna do now.
I,
But basically, that's what this says. We're creating like the measures of angles, like for the
okay.
circle itself. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. So we're doing that, and I kind of like amended this a little bit. Basically, I think one of the hardest parts about doing data creation is like keeping all your ducks in a row, like making sure you have the right amount of like data in whatever like you're putting together. And honestly, like this is totally like super old because I don't code this way anymore.
Yeah.
um, in my job, we're actually really bad sticklers or good sticklers about having everything in a data frame.
Mm.
And it used to be like when I coded like this, I had to make sure like everything was consistent because it was like I would make everything separately and then jam in and throw it all together at.
I see.
So yeah, using the N here, like on these other lines too, it's ensuring that we have the right amount of data so that we can get the image without any errors of like, oh, this vector isn't the same size as this one or whatever. So
Mm-hmm,
that's
mm-hmm.
basically now this next line is about the radiuses. So basically what this is obviously a sequence of numbers from 1 to n, which is 500, and that is literally just like the shifting of the starting points like of the lines. This is what's going to make it kind of have this like weird like square effect because we have different lengths of lines. So we have shorter lines that have like a length of 1 all the way to like a length of 500, and that's what's going to be happening there. Like after
Yeah.
we put it into the equation. Do you have any questions about that one? Because I feel like it's a little bit harder because these are going to get used
Yeah.
down.
No,
And
right. I think when I see them, I mean, on their own, I think they mostly make sense. The theta line might be the one that's confusing the most to me. But let's get down like to see them
sure,
actually in use, and then I might have some questions.
absolutely. Probably a good idea to rub as well. Okay, so then after that, I am just setting up the colors that I want to use. Basically, a simple, just vector of hex color code. Um, and just so you know, you don't have to use hex color code. You can also do like, oh, blue. Like
Mm-hmm.
R comes with like preset base codes that are in there, and you'll know
Yeah.
you got it right when it actually switches the color
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll
How did you
do that.
choose those colors?
So I actually found this color palette years ago. This was actually I found it randomly on Google and I don't remember where. But I chose it because I actually used it for a Tidy Tuesday I'd done in the past. I
Mm.
think it was something about like the Hot 100 Billboard songs or something through the
Okay.
years or something like that. But that's basically, I've been using this color palette like ever since because I love like all of these
This
little
is the
like,
official Meghan Harris color palette.
yeah. Actually, yeah. So this is so I don't know if I don't think I talked. I do have a package that I created to like help with art in R, and
Yeah.
this color palette is in there. The name of
Okay.
the palette is Rainbow. So yes,
Okay. All right.
this is my
We
like
can
official brand.
we'll put a link to that in the show notes if folks want to check that out.
Absolutely. So yeah, we're just doing a vector of colors, and then um what we're doing here again is because I'm not working in a data frame like I should be. We're making sure that we have like the right amount of um, data, like the right amount of colors. So what it's doing is like it's saying, okay, yeah, so our N is 500, and because we have 10 colors here, we need the right amount of data to split across those 10.
Hmm.
So when I run it, it'll make a vector now of 500 like values, which is going to match up with the rest of our data.
Gotcha.
So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're making a bunch of pieces that it looks like you're going to then combine into a data frame down below, which you'll use for the
That's how
plotting.
it should be. That's how it should
Okay.
be. So because I mean, because I do that now. Now everything is
Yeah.
in data frames and it's easier to follow. Because this is like very, very like OG before I learned how to do things more efficiently.
Hmm.
I'm just throwing everything into the ggplot at the end instead of
Okay.
like actually like making a data frame. But yeah, I totally could. Like if I wanted to, because obviously here's the data frame that we're gonna create. I
Yeah.
totally could do like um make another column of like colors and then pipe this in and like whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll, But yeah, that's what's happening.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the most important part is the actual data frame itself. So this is kind of what I was talking about when I was saying that one of the hardest parts is taking well-known geometric equations or formulas and creating parametric versions of them. So basically, when you're creating something called the parametric equation, in terms of ggplot, all that means is that you are taking that basic formula and you're making an x formula for it and a y formula for it.
Hmm.
And when you do that for circles, this is just always what the actual formula is. So if we're solving that formula, what is it? X squared plus y squared equals like r squared or whatever the formula for a circle is.
Mm-hmm.
When you are solving it for x, it turns into the cosine of your theta, so your angles, times your radius. And when
Hmm.
you solve it for y, it's always the sine value. I don't know why, that's just what it is. So basically that's all that's happening. It's just like, okay, we took that x squared plus y squared equals r squared and we
Yeah.
converted it into an x and a y and boom, there it is. That's it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. There's literally nothing more to that. So do you have any questions?
Well, can you run that that
Yeah,
little chunk there that starts on 27,
absolutely.
and then could you actually even pop up like the DF data in the viewer? Just curious to see it.
Absolutely. So you now have 500 rows of points. And what this is the points on the ggplot that corresponds to our theta when it is passed into that cosine and sine. That's literally all this is. Just a whole bunch of arbitrary numbers based off.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Any more questions about this?
No, I think well, again, I think it mostly makes sense. So that's the data that I can see then like on 33, you're piping that into ggplot. And then actually here, let me see if I can, before you like run it, see if I can make sure I like just looking at it, understand. So it looks like you're piping that data into ggplot. You're saying, your X aesthetic property is the X variable in DF data, same for the Y. Your color is equal to the vec colors vector, or I think that was a vector, right, that you made?
Yeah, as a vector of colors. Right?
And I know
Yeah.
you said like now you would do, if you were doing it, you would just have it be part of the
Yeah,
the
this should
data
just be
frame.
part of the data frame. I mean, honestly, like this is what this should be. it would be something like this. Yeah. So
Okay.
then I could just have colors here, even though like this is just gonna get overwritten. But
Yeah,
yeah, like
yeah.
this is how I've written
Got
now.
you.
Yes.
Okay. And then the G, well, actually, why don't you, so that totally makes sense. So that like up above when you define like the N and the theta was just used later on when you were making the DF data. The R, I don't remember where the R was used.
The R is also used here as well.
Oh,
But
that's
that
right.
is like, yeah, this is the parametric version of that geometric equation for a circle. Like this is what it is.
So all those are basically to create that DF data, which you then use in order to plot down below.
Yeah.
Cool. I understand it at a conceptual level, if not every single line, because like I said before, geometry was not my best subject.
I mean, it wasn't either. I'm pretty sure I got a D in geometry, dude, so it's fun.
Well, you should take this and go back and find your high school geometry teacher and show.
I know, right? Like, look at me now.
Cool.
Oh
Let's
gosh.
see how this works then.
Yeah. Yep. So, like you said, typing it in, setting up the G flat using geompass because it'll give me those lines. I use theme void because it will literally remove all the axes, the labels, like all that stuff. Using a theme here so that I can remove what remnants of a legend there would be, because I believe they would try to have a legend for this colors variable here. Making the background of it just black. And I use chord equal, which is actually essential. Like if you are creating, and I don't know why, I tried so hard to like look this up to why this is, but if you are creating any kind of like circular figures or like anything using like cosines or sines, like any kind of like wave like figures, like you have to use either chord equal or chord fix, chord underscore fix, to get it to show properly, or else like the aspect will be off.
Okay.
And I do not know the specifics of why that is. But that's just what it is.
That's a very common experience in R. I don't know why it does that, but it works.
I tried, dude. No, and I tried so hard because for the textbook we're making, like I was I'm doing the polygon chapter because I work with polygons the most for my art. And I tried so hard to like read the code, read the grammar of graphics book, like to see like why it shows up that way, but like I can't find no answer. So if someone else can give me an answer, that'd be great.
Okay.
But yes, so essentially we would run all of that and that will create what we have here. Yeah.
Huh.
So that's basically, and this was found by accident.
That's so interesting. I mean, I have to say that's actually a lot less code than I expected.
Oh yeah.
Looking at that, it looks complicated, right? Like it's like
a
bunch of pieces. But so if I'm looking at that, like there are a whole bunch of lines.
Yep.
And I'm just trying to think back to the data and how that maps to what I'm seeing.
Yeah. So essentially what you're seeing is each line like just in a circular fashion, but just at different radiuses. So kind of like how I was saying, like, oh, we have essentially like each color, you could see that as a radius. So this pink is like the biggest radius of like 5, and then we have 4, 3, or like whatever the numbers are. I forget what the numbers are. 500. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But it's essentially what I was trying to do, like why this was this accident, was I was trying to create multiple circles. And there is a way to do that, but I fudged up doing it and it created this. So it's trying to connect all of these different points where these smaller like circles would have been. And it just gives this effect because instead of like closing the actual circles, we're just dragging it along these points, almost like a kaleidoscope.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting because, you know, thinking about generative art, for example, versus like art, old-fashioned, I mean, I shouldn't say old-fashioned, art done, traditional art done with like, you know, paintbrush, for example. For that, if you want to have 500 lines, you got to go in and paint each of those
Mhm.
lines. Whereas here,
Hey,
you adjust that n variable, say, or adjust
you
your code in a
can.
few different places, rerun it, and it's going to look very different because you can adjust the number of times that it
Yeah.
shows up, right?
I'm wondering if I can. Right. Exactly. I'm wondering if I can do what I was trying to do, like when I first created this. Like, let's just. I wonder if this would. Hold on 1 second. I wonder if this would actually do like what I was. Yes. So, this is what I was like attempting to do, like when I
Yeah,
first
yeah,
created this. So, like, if we change, the angles, so 0 to 2 times pi, that's all of the angles of a circle. Like that's it.
yeah,
So it creates that. But then if I'm changing the radius. So what I did was instead of having like the radius be from 1 to 500, now I literally just have okay, 5. Like just so here's
yeah,
radius equals 1, 2, 3, 4.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
then to get it so that it does not do the crossing of paths or whatever, you have to put this group here so that it knows to group it
To group them
together and
together, yeah.
essentially pick up the pencil and whatever. And then I have to fix the colors or whatever. But yeah,
Right.
um, so yeah,
But
like if you
huh.
change stuff, it'll change it drastically.
Right. But I mean the contrast with doing this by hand where you'd have to
Mhm.
do that, the
Over and over.
the amount of change you just made to that took you less than a minute, whereas,
Yeah,
that would take a long time, obviously, to recreate that by hand. And it's interesting. I
right.
mean, I think that's a good example of showing the possibilities. Cool. Yeah, you
Mhm.
can switch it and make that.
Switch to make other stuff. Yeah, I think that that's also what I love about generative art because there is that power of I mean because I make art the old fashioned way too. Like I actually like paint in general, like in real life.
Yeah.
Um, so it didn't this whole thing of generative art really didn't make sense to me until one, I understood the concept of creating data. But I also kind of had to look at it as like, oh, like I'm looking at a canvas, right? So if I rerun this and don't put deployed, it's like I
Mm.
had to kind of be
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, like if I was physically taking a pencil, like what would be like the X and the Y values popping up on the screen right now as I draw my pen over
Yeah.
and honestly, that's kind of how I try to teach myself moving forward because honestly, like as you can probably see here, I really love circles and I love doing like landscape stuff. I love like doing like you can look at a picture and be like, oh, like that's a beach or like that's like I'm
Right.
not really too into like abstract art. So when I am faced with like I think creating like these hills on this picture, it's like I literally had to like get a plot up and be like, okay, so I should be
Huh.
doing this and like so doing that, I mean that's just kind of like how my brain works. So I
Yeah.
could move backwards and be like, okay, like what do I need for that? I'm like, oh, I need a cosine function, like 'cause this is like a part of a wave, you know.
Right. Right.
It's kind of like being able to look at it and like understand like literally everything is math, unfortunately, but like you don't have to like, get what you need and then leave. Like
Yeah. But it's such a unique combination of, coding, data, math, and art. Because I think a lot of people don't, when you think the popular view of what R is, it's just for
Mhm.
like doing stats and like hardcore data analysis. And I think this
It-
is such a unique way to show that it can do a lot more than that.
absolutely. Absolutely. Like I will go on my soapbox about how like this enriched my regular day job, it's fine.
Yeah.
Definitely
Well, I
utility
actually
about
want
that.
to ask you about that. Maybe we can actually
Yeah.
kind of wrap up with that. Actually, so if you feel free to, you can stop sharing
Yeah, no
now.
problem.
Um,
There we go.
yeah, so I want to wrap up with that because you have said that doing generative art helped you with your day job, helped you with the other work in art that you do.
Mhm.
So can you talk a little bit about that? In what ways did generative art help you with your regular work?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So doing generative art especially like while I was on maternity leave. Obviously, it helped to keep my brain active, because I think one of the things I was scared about, because my maternity leave was like exceptionally long. I took 6 months. So that was 6 months of not needing to be coding. Like I didn't have to
Hmm.
code. Like I didn't have to open up my computer. I literally had my work laptop like locked away like for the entire 6 months. So I was really concerned about like opening up R one day and just like forgetting everything that I learned.
Yeah.
So that was like one of the motivations of like I gotta be doing something. Um but I also um it was a good tool for me to kind of like get over some mental blocks that I had.
Mm.
So one of those blocks was actually iteration. Like doing things in lists, doing a lot of like iterative operations over and over and over again. And like the per package in the tidyverse, if you're familiar, like that's like the, in my opinion, like the S tier package to use when you are
Hmm.
doing repetition. But there's also nothing wrong with doing for loops and while loops and like making those
Yeah.
control flows manually. There's nothing wrong with that. Either way, like the aspect of use of like creating art, they got to a point where like I wanted to do a lot of things over and over and over. Like there was a point where like I probably would have made all of those data points that we just saw manually because I didn't
Wow.
understand how iteration worked.
Wow.
Um, but using R for generative art helped me to kind of like get over that like block of like, because it was different for me personally, where it's just like, okay, I understand the art I'm trying to make. Um, this is what I need to do. And so you get better with like resource gathering. You get better with like your Google searches of like, what are you trying to do?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, it was to the point when I was on maternity leave that one of my coworkers, so one of my coworkers used to be Daniel Silberg, who is known for his amazing packages like GT Summary, and he works in big pharma now in San Francisco. I'm sad, I missed you, Daniel. But there would be times where like I just text him and be like, "Hey, I'm trying to do this thing. I know you know nothing about art, but how do you think
Hmm.
I can do XYZ?" And it just kind of made me have a different reason for needing to do things, right? So now, after doing all this stuff on maternity leave, I made my package while I was on maternity leave. Like I had started that up, and I just had so many reasons to like now start doing all these things in R that either I wasn't introduced to, or I just had like a mental block because I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
know why I'm iterating through these things and like blah blah blah. It just changed the motivation a little bit when it was something that like wasn't stressful, because like this
Yeah.
wasn't something I was reporting to somebody, and
Sure.
was for fun. It was like I was the expert of what the output should be. So it was like
Right.
it was a little bit easier for me to be like, okay, yeah, I need to make like multiple things of this, or I need to test this in my package. Like it made it just so that I was able to retain that information a little better, so
Yeah. I mean, that's such a good example, like the iteration example of, obviously
mm,
iteration can apply in all sorts
everywhere.
of work that you do. So the fact that you really learned it through doing generative art and then applied it other places is great.
Yeah,
Uh,
that and package development too. Because
mm,
package development, I was just like, I'm not smart enough for this, And then when it was just like, well, like I, because I think people will notice that too. Like the more they're doing work, like regardless if it's art or not, it's just like I am always making the same line of code to make this
sure.
application file or
Sure.
whatever, So it got to the point where I'm just like, this could be a package. I could do a
Right.
package.
Right.
And the package, I wish I had more time. Probably within the next year, will probably be some huge updates to it when I have time and everything slows down. But regardless, I learned how to do unit testing while I was doing that.
Mm,
I learned how to validate data and inputs to functions so that like they're working properly. I learned how to use the CLI package to make pretty package error messages and stuff like
yeah.
that. So when I went back to maternity leave, it's just like, oh, hey, I can like maintain our packages here. I can go in and edit this and not be afraid I'm gonna break
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I've seen this. So that really was the benefit, was like I was just getting exposed to so much. It's like
Right.
I came back from maternity leave and I felt like I was smarter from when I was hired. Like it was amazing.
That's great. Well, If someone wants to get started with generative art, where would you recommend they go to learn more?
So I'm going to say either my Intro to Data Art blog post, because it is unique and that it is really like it's structured for like a true beginner.
Yeah.
But there is also a Art from Code. That's the name of it. Art from Code workshop that Danielle Navarro did for our studio conf like 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
That one is really good because she explains everything and there's fleshed out code for everything. So it's great for beginners as well.
Great. Well, we will include the links to both of those in the show notes. Megan, thanks for joining us. It was really great to chat with you and see the generative art that you do.
Thank you so much, Steve. It was fun.
That's it for today's episode. I hope you learned something new about how you can use R. Do you know anyone else who might be interested in this episode? Please share it with them. If you're interested in learning R, check out R for the Rest of Us. We've got courses to help you no matter whether you're just starting out with R or you've got years of experience. Do you work for an organization that needs help communicating effectively with data? Check out our consulting services at rfortherestofus.com/consulting. We work with clients to make high-quality data visualization, beautiful reports made entirely with R, interactive maps, and much, much more. And before we go, one last request. Do you know anyone who's using R in a unique and creative way? We're always looking for new guests for the R for the Rest of Us podcast. If you know someone who would be a good guest, please email me at david@rfortherestofus.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.